Welcome to Hope City Church.
This is a place where you don't have to have it all together. Where it's okay to not be okay. We're all in the same boat.
That's why we gather every Sunday, because we believe Jesus gives us a better way to do life.
This is a place where we can connect and grow in our faith, where we are challenged to not settle for complacency.
Where we pursue grace and truth with a desire to become more like Jesus.
Our ultimate hope is to be a place where we bump into Jesus and experience his life-changing hope.
This hope changes our families.
This hope changes our workplaces and cities.
This hope changes you, and this hope changes me.
This hope is for everyone.
All right, Hope City. Man, it is good to be together. Hey, if you're still grabbing a coffee or a bagel or something like that, go ahead and keep doing that. But hey, if you're ready, let's find our way back to our seats. We're going to jump in with our teaching today. Man, if we've not met before, my name's Adam. I'm our lead pastor here, and I'd really love to get to know you. I'll be in the back after the gathering, so please feel free to stop by and say hey to me. Like Ashley just said, we've been in this series. We're in week 2 of it. It's called Give Hope, and this is going to take us from now all the way up to Christmas, and we're going to be taking a look at how can we become the kinds of people who give hope away to everyone around us, the same way that our God moved in our direction through Christmas to bring hope to the world. Hey, and so last week, just to catch us up in case you weren't here, or you're like me and you don't even remember what happened yesterday, and last week is a long time ago, we looked at this, that Jesus, when he gave hope in his life, he did this one person, one conversation, one interaction at a time. Hey, and so we asked this question as a church. We said, who in our lives needs to experience hope? Is it a neighbor or a coworker, a family member, a friend? Is it a buddy at the gym? And we challenged ourselves to start praying for that person. And we said that we want to do this around Christmas at Hope City. Everyone invite one, because we all have someone in our lives that needs to experience hope. And there's no greater hope found than what we see in the Christmas story, that our God chose to come to be with us. And so today we want to hang on to that idea, but we're actually going to take it one step further. And we're going to look at how God brings hope to our families. Now, some of you have heard this story before, but when Ashley and I were first married and early on in marriage and ministry and just out of college, we were like many of us, and we were like flat out broke, couldn't afford anything, and we lived in like the hood. We lived in this old like shotgun style factory community house that had been remodeled, and our next door neighbors had an interesting business going on. There were straight up drug deals going on next door, and we had to call the cops on multiple occasions. And in the middle of that, we knew that Jesus had called us to ministry. We knew that we were supposed to be the kinds of people who were giving hope away to everybody else. But I don't know if you know this, but ministry is not known for like bringing home the big bucks. I mean, we don't like live in mansions and drive Bentleys or anything like that, you know? So we made quite a few sacrifices to be able to do that. In the middle of all that, bringing home a subpar paycheck and living in a less than ideal neighborhood, and we're just struggling to make ends meet, we found out that Ashley was pregnant with Oliver, our oldest son. And I don't know, like parents, what this moment was like for you when you found out your first baby was on the way, but for me, as a dad and as a husband, this instinct to protect and provide for my family just kicked in unlike anything that I'd ever experienced before. The problem was, I didn't make enough money in my job for Ashley to even be off work for a month to be with Oliver when he was born. And we lived in a less than ideal neighborhood to raise a family in. And I'm like, all right, God, like, what are you going to do about this? How are we going to work this out? And it brought up all kinds of questions for me. Maybe you've been there before. I was asking questions like, how am I going to take care of Ashley and our son? Do I just need to quit ministry? Maybe I've got the wrong plan for my life, and I just need to go find a better job that pays the bills and takes care of my family. And really at the core of that, I was going, hey, Jesus, I know that you have called us to this, but it doesn't make sense that you're not taking care of us and you're not providing for us the way that you promised to, because we can't even meet basic needs right now. And really at the core of all those questions was this, and this is what we want to look at today. I was asking, hey, Jesus, will you really take care of me? And will you really take care of those closest to me? Have you ever been there? Have you ever said, hey, Jesus, I trust you with my future. I trust you with my eternity. I want to follow you, but I need you just to take care of me today, because I can't see how you're taking care of me right now the way that you promised to. Will you really take care of me and those closest to me? Or do I just need to go kind of figure it out on my own? Have you ever asked questions like that? Maybe it's around finances, like the bills are piling up and groceries and gas cost as much as your mortgage payment, and then you got to buy Christmas gifts this year, right? Or maybe it's health, like that diagnosis came out of nowhere. and it's starting to change everything. Or maybe it's your relationships, right? Maybe she walked out or he left, and you're left picking up the pieces and trying to put it back together. Or you're figuring out, how do I raise these kids, and how do I do this in a way that, man, I don't lose myself or lose them along the way. Maybe you do have kids and you're parenting your kids and you go, Jesus, I know you told me that they're made in your image, but all I see are a bunch of little demons running around right now. Anybody? Like, I'm just keeping it real. Yeah, I know, seriously. Or maybe you have adult kids that walked away from the family or the faith. Maybe you look at our world right now and you're like, Jesus, it is craziness. Are you really reigning and ruling and holding all things together the way you promised you would? And at the root of all those questions is really this. Jesus, will you take care of me? And will you take care of those closest to me? And that question is literally hardwired within us from birth. Did you know this? That neurologists have actually discovered that babies are born, and the first thing they do when they open their eyes is they look around for somebody who's looking for them. They literally are looking for the eyes of one who's going to care for them and protect them and provide for them. It's hardwired in us to search for one who will care for us. And that continues to play out through our lives as we look at relationships and meaning and purpose and value and identity. And here's what happens as we get older and we can't find one looking back at us. We look to ourselves, don't we? If we don't see Jesus looking at us, taking care of us, and protecting and providing for us, we say things like this. We go, well, I guess it's just up to me. I guess I have to do it on my own. I guess I have to figure out who I am, and I have to take care of myself and those closest to me because I don't know if it's going to come from somewhere else. So it's time to man up or woman up or whatever that looks like and just make it happen. And when we walk through life in that space, man, it's awfully hard to become the kinds of people who give hope to other people, isn't it? And so that question, man, that's key. We have to get this right. Will Jesus take care of me, and will he take care of those closest to me? And so this morning, if you have your Bibles or your phones, you can go ahead and turn to Mark chapter 1. We're going to be in Mark chapter 1, and then if you have a physical Bible with you, go ahead and put your finger in Luke chapter 5. We're going to be there here in a little bit as well. We'll start in Mark 1, and then we'll flip over to Luke 5. But we're going to look at the story of a guy that we've talked about around here at Hope City quite a bit. His name's Peter. And Peter struggled through this question throughout his life. He was a blue-collar fisherman who was rough around the edges, and he grew up in this fishing community in the northern part of Israel on the Sea of Galilee. And when Peter first met Jesus, he went on to become one of Jesus' closest friends in this life. But what I think is so cool about Peter and his story is that so many of us can identify with where Peter finds himself. He was kind of this all-or-nothing guy that got it wrong as often as he got it right. And he was really just asking, hey, Jesus, if I follow you, if I trust you with everything, will you really take care of me? And will you really take care of those closest to me? And so we first meet Peter in John chapter 1. I'm going to give some context around this. Jesus has just started his ministry in southern Israel. And Peter's brother Andrew actually was the first one in their family to meet Jesus. And he spent some time with Jesus. And Andrew comes to Peter and he says, hey, Peter, I think this Jesus guy is what the Bible all throughout the Old Testament has been pointing to. He's the Savior and the Messiah that we've been looking for. And Peter's like, really? And Andrew's like, yeah, man, you just got to come and see. You just got to come check out who Jesus is. And so Peter goes and he just hangs out with Jesus. And through spending time with Jesus, by coming to see, he believes that Jesus is worth giving his life to. And so Jesus gives him another invitation. He says, just follow me. Live life with me. See how I do this life. See if I am who I claim to be and if I'm really worth giving your life to. And so Peter, Andrew, James, and John, these are fishing buddies that are together. They start following Jesus and living life together. They walked with him and they ate with him and they spent time together. They did ministry together for 18 months, a year and a half they spent with Jesus in southern Israel. And then finally, Jesus hits a point where he goes, man, let's move this ministry back to your all's hometown, to Capernaum, which is all the way up in northern Israel. And that's where we're going to pick up this story in Mark chapter 1. And Jesus, after 18 months with these guys, is going to up the ante and he's going to ask for more from them. Verse 16. As Jesus walked beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon, which was Peter's name before he started following Jesus. Peter was like a nickname that Jesus gave him along the way. It means rock. And what Jesus was saying is that if you trust me, Peter, this is the future I see for you. He sees Simon, Peter, and his brother Andrew casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. And so Jesus says, come follow me, and I will send you out to fish for people. So at once they left their nets and they followed him. And when he got on a little further, he saw James and the son of Zebedee and his brother John, these fishing buddies of Peter and Andrew, and they were preparing their nets. And without delay, he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired hands, and they followed Jesus. Now, whenever we read stories like this, we can tend to see this stuff and be like, of course it happened because it was Jesus, right? But we can't apply these to our everyday lives because a lot of us struggle with the idea that I would leave my family or my job to go follow Jesus, right? But we have to remember, these guys have just spent 18 months with Jesus up to this point. They'd seen him turn water into wine at a wedding. They'd seen him heal sick people. They'd spent time with him. They were coming to trust him, and they were coming to believe that he is who he claims to be. He was God in the flesh who came to give hope to the world. And the invitation that Jesus gave, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men, or I'll send you out to fish for people, this would have been a common invitation of teachers in their day. In fact, Greek philosophers use that phrase, follow me and I will send you out to fish for people, to describe capturing people's hearts and minds with a certain type of teaching. And these boys who grew up in a Jewish faith, they literally would have been waiting for a rabbi or a teacher to come along and invite them, follow me, like spend time with me. This would have been like the equivalent of like landing a dream job or getting drafted by your favorite sports team. So these guys had literally been leaning in and waiting for this moment. And they go and they start following Jesus, and they learn to become fishers of men. They help Jesus give hope to everyone around them as they go. And if you keep reading along in Mark chapter 1, if you've got your Bible, you'll see the first place that they go. They show up in the synagogue, which is the equivalent of going to church. And they see Jesus that day cast out a demon from this guy in church that is disrupting everything. I mean, if you could imagine somebody standing up in the back right now while I'm teaching, just yelling things out loud, and Jesus casts out that demon. Some of you may wonder if there's a demon inside the person sitting next to you, like don't elbow them, just keep looking up here, all right? But Mark tells us after that moment what they do next. Verse 29, as soon as they left church, they went with James and John to the home of Simon. Remember, this is Peter, hang on to that, and Andrew. And Peter's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they immediately told Jesus about her. So after this crazy day at church, these guys go home and they do what a lot of us do. They invite their friend Jesus over, and they're going to go have lunch together. But we learn more about Peter and his family situation. He has a mother-in-law, which means he has a what? A wife, right? And we don't know if he has kids or a family attached to that, whatever that looks like, but we know that Peter has people depending on him to protect and provide for them. And how did Peter provide for his family? Fishing, right? And he's just quit that job. So Peter spent 18 months in southern Israel following Jesus, and then he quits his job fishing to keep following Jesus, and now his mother-in-law is sick. How well do you think this conversation goes over with Peter's wife? I mean, can you imagine this conversation in your family if you're like, yeah, I met this guy, Jesus, I quit the job, and I'm just going to go be with him, and now my mother-in-law is sick, or, your mother-in-law is sick, and we got to take care of her. I don't know what that would look like for you, but I talked to Ashley about this week, and I was like, how would this go for us? And she goes, well, I'd be angry, right? Like, Adam, you just spent 18 months away from our family, and now you quit your job? Like, what in the world are you talking about? Like, how are we going to take care of our family, let alone my mom who's sick? And in this day, a fever could have been deadly. And she would say things like this, like, Adam, I know you know Jesus. I know you trust him and you spent time with him, but is he going to take care of us? And to Ashley, she would probably turn to Jesus, and I've literally seen her do this as we were moving to Colorado back 4 or 5 years ago, and as we were coming here to plant Hope City, she's asking the question, hey, Jesus, if we follow you, are you really going to take care of us? Are you really going to take care of our family? Can you imagine this moment? Do you think this caused like marital or financial strain for Peter's family? Do you think when Peter said, man, I'm going to go out of town with Jesus for a few months, and I'll be back, all right, just hold it down. How do you think that went? It probably went about as well as like when I'm gone for a weekend or a work trip or something like that. It's controlled chaos at best. And so you have to imagine that Peter and his wife are wondering, hey, Jesus, we know that you are who you claim to be, but are you going to take care of us? And are you going to take care of those closest to us? And then this incredible moment happens. Jesus goes, verse 31, Jesus goes to Peter's mother-in-law. He took her hand and he helped her up, and the fever left her, and she began to wait on them. Now again, can you imagine what this moment had to be like for Peter and his wife? Can you imagine as they're going, man, Jesus, we've seen you heal other people. We've heard stories of how you work. Will you really take care of us? Will you really take care of our family? And this moment gets incredible because in a moment, Jesus answers that question for them by healing Peter's mother-in-law. And then she gets up and starts making lunch for him, which is amazing, right? Like there's nothing like lunch at grandma's house after church on Sunday. And that's what happens. And then after lunch, they probably took a good nap. And then it gets even crazier because we learn this. The whole town showed up at their door because Jesus was there. Verse 32. That evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. And the whole town gathered at the door. And Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He drove out many demons, but he would not allow the demons to speak because they knew who he was. See, Jesus did not come into this world for the demons to proclaim who he is. He came into this world to reveal who he is to us so we would go proclaim it. And I don't know what mental picture you have of this moment, of this town showing up, but think about all the sick and demon-possessed people in a moment showing up in a neighborhood at your doorstep. We all have that crazy neighbor, right? Like take that times 100, and that's what this might have looked like. Just really hurting, broken people showing up. In Peter's house, it was likely smaller than like that shotgun-style house Ashley and I lived in like right after we got married or whatever apartment you had out of college. In fact, we think that we know what Peter's neighborhood looked like. Archaeologists have uncovered in Capernaum this neighborhood that they believe to be Peter's neighborhood, and all these foundations represent homes within that neighborhood. And so it's this really tight, compact spot. And then they actually think they've discovered where Peter's house was. Where you see this big, like, spaceship-looking thing, that's actually a church that they built over the top of where they believe this took place that day. And so this neighborhood is wild. Like, it's super compact, super close. This moment would have been craziness. But the point of the whole story is this. When Peter learned to trust Jesus, to take care of him and those closest to him, his wife, his mother-in-law, the rest of his family, here's what happened. His home became a place of hope and healing to the whole neighborhood. They could actually take their eyes off themselves because they knew that Jesus was looking at them and that he was going to take care of them. And so they joined Jesus in giving hope to everyone around them. And that's the bottom line for today. You can take a picture of this next slide. When we trust Jesus to take care of us and those closest to us, our homes and families become a place of hope and healing. They become places of prayer where we learn to depend on Jesus to provide. They become places of peace, not chaos, where that peace starts to reign and rule the way that God intends it to. They become places where our kids learn to know and love Jesus. They become places where hurting and broken people find hope and healing, and they find community. They become places of refuge and comfort and generosity. They become places where the better way to do life that Jesus talked about, it's actually practiced and lived out. And then they all lived happily ever after. Y'all know that's not the end of the story though, right? Because it's never that simple in our lives. I mean, it'd be great if this story had a nice, neat bow on the end. But for many of us, these glimpses into trusting Jesus to take care of us and these moments of hope and healing happening in our families, they feel pretty short-lived, right? Because we wake up again the next day, and we struggle again the next day to trust Jesus to take care of us. And that's exactly what happens for Peter. Because if you continue reading on in Mark chapter 1, you'll see that Jesus got away early the next morning to pray and be with his Father. And that's what we actually see Jesus doing often. The crazier his life got, the more he got away from the chaos and the craziness and got away to be with God. And then Peter and the others show up and they find Jesus praying and they're like, hey, Jesus, the whole town is back here. Like, we're ready to roll. You got to get back here. These people want you. And Jesus said, no, we're not going to go back there. Jesus relied on his Father for direction for life and ministry. And often that took him a different direction than the crowds wanted him to go. And so Peter, Andrew, James, and John, they pack the bags and they follow Jesus out again. And they go on this mission trip around the region of Galilee, giving hope to everyone around them. But that question, Jesus, will you really take care of us and those closest to us, is going to rear its ugly head for Peter again. So now we're going to flip over to Luke chapter 5. If you got your phones, Bibles, go ahead and go to Luke 5. Because we read in Luke 5 that right after this mission trip, Peter goes right back to what he was doing before. He goes right back to fishing. And these stories, when you line them up chronologically, Luke 5 actually lines up right after this mission trip that they go on in Mark chapter 1. So Luke chapter 5, verse 1. One day as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, which is another name for the Sea of Galilee, the people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. And he saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. And he got into one of the boats, the one belonging to who? Simon. Remember, this is Peter, right? And he asked him to put out a little further from shore, and then he sat down and he started teaching people from the boat. And after he finished speaking, he said to Peter, put out into the deep water and let your nets down for a catch. And Simon answered, hey, master, we've worked hard all night, and we have caught nothing. But because you say so, I'll let down the nets. Now, hang on for a minute, right? Hadn't Peter already quit his job fishing to go follow Jesus? Hadn't Jesus already proven to Peter that if he trusted him, he's going to take care of him and he's going to take care of his family? I mean, wasn't Peter's family and home now a place of hope and healing? See, I think Peter's a lot like us. We can experience Jesus' work powerfully, but then life hits, right? The bills pile up, there's pressure at work and school, or that phone call comes, or someone gets sick, and that whole question can start to play out over again. Jesus, are you really going to take care of me? And are you going to take care of those closest to me? And that's exactly what's happening for Peter here. And so he goes back to what he knows, which is a lot of what we do. He goes back to fishing. And apparently he's not a very good fisherman, right? Because they fished all night, and they've caught nothing. And then Jesus, this carpenter turned rabbi, starts giving a professional fisherman fishing advice. You ever get unsolicited advice from somebody whenever you're struggling through something that they know nothing about what you're doing, and they come over and they just start giving you like advice that you're not asking for? And I think that's what this moment was like for Peter. And I think he just kind of sighs in this moment, and he's like, all right, Jesus, I'll give it a try. See, what Peter would have known as a fisherman was the best fishing on the Sea of Galilee happened in the shallow water at night. And now Jesus is asking him to go out to the deep water during the day and try to catch fish. Verse 6, here's what happens though. When they had thrown out the nets into the deep water, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. And so they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and they filled both boats so full that they began to sink. See, it turns out that Jesus was better at taking care of Peter than Peter was taking care of himself. And then Simon Peter saw this, and he fell at Jesus' knees, and he goes, go away from me, Lord. I'm a sinful man. Have you ever been there? You ever had a moment where you struggled to trust Jesus, and then he shows up in a way that just blows your mind, and you're like, Jesus, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve your goodness and your grace. I don't deserve what you're giving me. Just get away. And that's Peter. See, all sin in our lives can be boiled down to one thing. It can be boiled down to unbelief. The root of all sin starts with failing to trust that Jesus is who he says he is, and that he will do what he promised to do in our lives. That he actually will take care of us, and he will take care of those closest to us. And here's what happened next. As Peter sees this moment, it says he and all of his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they'd taken. They'd never seen anything like this. And these guys had fished this lake their whole lives. And so were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners. And Jesus said to Simon in this moment, as he's going, Jesus, just get away from me. Jesus goes, don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people. So they pulled their boats up on the shore, and they left everything, and they followed Jesus. Now remember, who were the first 4 people that Jesus invited to follow him? Andrew, Peter, James, and John. And who are these guys that are back fishing? Andrew, Peter, James, and John. And there's a really interesting detail when we put these stories from Mark 1 and Luke 5 side by side. And I want to look back at this from Mark 1 and verse 18. Jesus' original call was this. It says that Peter and Andrew, they left their nets and followed him when Jesus said, come follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. And then he goes on and he finds James and John, and they left their father Zebedee in the what? In the boat with the hired men and followed him. So what did they still have available to them just as an insurance policy? Just in case. Peter and Andrew, they left their what? Their nets. Whose boat did Jesus get in that day? Peter's boat, right? And James and John, they left their what? They left their boat. So what would they still had as fishermen? They had their nets. And so these guys are like, hey, just in case Jesus doesn't come through, we're going to hang on to these things. And so they pool their resources together, and they go back to fishing. I mean, we can find ourselves there all the time, can't we? Like, Jesus, I want to follow you. But just in case you don't take care of me the way that I think you should, the way that I think that you promised to, I'm just going to hang on to this part of my life. I'm going to hang on to my money just in case. I'm going to hang on to my relationships. I'm going to hang on to my addictions. Jesus, you can have part of it, but I just don't know if I trust you with all of it yet. And it turns out for Peter and his family and James and John and their families, they weren't as good at taking care of their own needs as they thought they were on their own. They fished all night and they caught nothing. And then Jesus shows up and he provides more fish than they knew what to do with. Luke 5, verse 9 again, it says that Peter and all of his companions were astonished. They'd never seen fish like this. And then Jesus said to Simon, don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people. And so they pulled up their nets and boats on the shore, and they did what? They left everything this time, and they followed him. So this story leaves us with a few questions we've got to consider for our lives, all right? The first question goes like this. What would have to happen in your life for you to be amazed by Jesus? What would have to happen in your life for you to be amazed by Jesus? And that word amazed that is used here, astonished, it literally translates amazed or immovable. What would Jesus need to do to where you became absolutely captivated with him and immovable in your faith in him? How would he need to show up in your relationships or your marriage or your parenting or your finances or your job or other stuff so that nothing could shake you from the fact that he is who he claims to be and he will do what he promises to do? That he'll take care of you and he'll take care of the closest people to you. What would he have to do? The second question is this. What are your nets and boats? What are the things that you keep holding on to as an insurance policy just in case Jesus doesn't come through the way he promised? Again, is that a relationship? Or is that a part of your life? You know that part you're thinking of right now where you're like, Jesus, you can have it all. Just don't touch that. That's still mine. Is it something that you've prayed for a long time, but maybe it's not changing? Is it your work or is it your accomplishments? I'll tell you exactly what it is for me, all right? And I know it is what it, I know that this is it for a lot of us too. It's money. For me, money is what I look to for security. For Peter, Andrew, James, and John, fishing would have represented income. And they had a safety net, right? And when money's there, Jesus and I are great. But when it's not, I'm really quick to think that he's not going to take care of me or the people around me. And money is the one thing that Jesus says is the surefire indicator of whether or not he actually has our hearts. Whether or not I trust him to be who he claims to be and will do everything that he promised to do. And as I hang on to money, here's what happens in my life. I start to trust myself or my money to provide what only Jesus can provide for me. So is it possible for me, and maybe for some of us in here, that Jesus is actually capable of providing more and doing more with the little bit that I'm holding on to take care of myself than I'm able to attain on my own? Is it possible that Jesus, if I surrender it to him, can do more with it just like he did for Peter and all the fishing buddies? So back to that story I told at the beginning. Ash and I, I'm losing my mic here. We were flat broke, and we lived in this rough neighborhood, and we had a baby on the way. And we couldn't even afford for her to be off work for a month after she had Oliver. And at the same time, Jesus started working in each of our hearts and lives separately and just encouraging us to be more generous. And then we came together and we started talking about what he was doing separately, and we agreed it doesn't make sense right now. There's no way that the money adds up. There is no way that we should be doing this, but Jesus is asking us to be more generous. And so we decided that we would actually take Jesus at his word. This is the one area of life around finances where God says, test me. Put me to the test and see if I won't provide more with the little that you offer me than what you can do with all of it on your own. And so Jesus started placing some opportunities in front of us. There was a family that we got to know that the wife was dying of cancer, and they needed a new dryer. And I'm a great pastor because I was like, you know what, I'll go pray about that for you. And I'm sure God will provide. And then as I'm praying about it, God's like, you dummy, you're the one that's going to buy the dryer for them. And so we did, even though the money didn't make sense. And at the same time, God was asking us to be more generous to the church that we were part of. And so we started giving in a way that, again, didn't make sense. The money did not add up, I'm telling you. And then out of nowhere, something crazy happened. I got a promotion unexpected at the church that I work for. And that promotion covered the cost, get this, to the dollar amount of what Ashley made in a whole year. Meaning this, that she could be off work as long as we needed her to be to take care of our kids. It was almost like God is going, hey, I'm going to take care of you, but I need to take you through an experience to know that you can trust me. I want you to know that I am who I claim to be, and I will do everything that I promise to do. And over that same time, he turned our family and our home into a place of hope and healing. I don't have time to get into the full story this morning, but he actually wanted us to start caring about and loving our drug dealer next door neighbors and building a relationship with them. He actually started turning our living room into the place where people in the neighborhood would show up when life hit the fan, and they'd be like, hey, you guys, I think you can help us with this stuff. And then along the way, he showed us not only is he going to provide for us, but what our family's purpose was. Like, listen, I was ready to quit. I told Ashley, I just want to look like the guy on our Christmas slide. I want to ride a motorcycle and go work in a factory and just take care of our family. But Jesus showed us our purpose here on this earth as we learn to trust him to provide for us. He said, your family, you're here to help other people experience hope. That's why your family's on this planet. And man, I tell you, there's still times that we struggle to trust and obey him. And this season of Give Hope is one of those where he's stretching us right now, Hope City. He's asking us to give more as we're getting into this season of Give Hope. But what he's proven again and again and again, all I can do is tell you my story. What he's proven again and again and again is that when we trust him, he takes care of all we need and more. So what about you? What do we do with all this? As we learn to trust Jesus to take care of us and those closest to us, how can we actually become families and homes where hope and healing takes place? And we give hope to everyone around us. For us, it looked like this. It started with prayer. It started with this simple prayer like, hey, Jesus, would you just show us what's next? I don't know how to get 10 steps down the road. All I know is, what do you want me to do next? And then would you be willing as you pray that to actually do it? And as you do it, see if Jesus doesn't just show up in that part of your life in the way that he promised to. The second thing for us, and this has been, more impactful probably for me than anything else, is generosity. We have a goal as a church to raise $100,000 by the end of the year. And that's a big number, and here's why we landed on that. Because it gives us a chance to forward fund all of our outreach initiatives for next year, to be the community that continues to give hope away to everyone around us in 2024. It allows us to partner with Shared Beginnings to get hospital bags for moms who are having babies and to get them care packages when they have miscarriages, but they don't have the resources to walk through that stuff alone. It'll help us put a stake in the ground as a church that we are a community that is committed to giving hope away to everyone around us. It's going to give us an opportunity to take a look at some things around staff and buildings going into the next year that we've really been praying about together. And man, as you take a look at the end of the year, maybe as an individual or even for your company, would you consider giving a growing percentage of your income to the work that God is doing through Hope City? And let me ask it this way. Do you think that God may be able to take care of you more with just 90% of your income than you can do with 100% on your own? And if you don't know the answer to that, just test him. Because when it comes to generosity, Jesus is often waiting for us to take the first step. And as we do, he comes in and he says, I'm going to take care of you in a way that you could never ask or imagine. Are you willing to take the risk and just test him? See if he is who he claims to be. And then the final way that Jesus has transformed our family is through serving. And we've got a really great opportunity coming up with our partner Shared Beginnings next weekend. On our local impact weekends, Hope City, these weekends aren't about us and what we come in here and get from church. This is an opportunity for us to go out and be church and to give hope away to people who are really looking for it in our community. So man, how might he work as you take your eyes off yourself next weekend and you serve a whole bunch of families in our community that need to experience hope? We were meant to live lives that were given away to others. What might that model for your kids if you bring them in with you and serve that way next weekend? See, often the church is described as a family, right? And around here at Hope City, we want to be a family that trusts Jesus to take care of us and everyone sitting in this room. And then as we do that, we can take our eyes off ourselves. We can stop thinking, Jesus, I just need this, I need this, I need this. And we can start being people where this family is a place of hope and healing that gives hope away to everyone around us. And so we're going to go into our time of prayer that we do every week. And we take communion every week. This is a chance for us to pause. And if your faith is in Jesus, here's what communion means for you. You're looking at this piece of bread and this cup of juice, and you're saying, Jesus, I believe that on a day in history, your body was broken and your blood was poured out for the forgiveness of my sins. I trust you with my eternity. Can I tell you what the hard thing is for me? I have trouble trusting Jesus with today. But if he can hold you for all eternity, do you think he can take care of today and tomorrow too? And so as you take communion, it's an opportunity just to say, Jesus, I trust you with whatever you want to do next. And then maybe you take some time to pray and just connect with Jesus and ask him that question, Jesus, what's next? I've got some stuff in my life. What's next? How are you going to work this out? And how are we going to do it together? And whatever you tell me to do, Jesus, I just want to hand that over to you, and I want to take that next step. If you need prayer for anything, man, we are a community that's committed to praying for each other because we believe we cannot do this life alone. We need each other, and we need God to do what only he can do in our lives. And so we'll have some people right down front here that would love to meet with you and pray with you. If you need anything, just pray for this morning, all right? So let me pray for us, then these next few minutes are yours. So God, you're good. And man, I am just so grateful, Jesus, that the hard stuff we walked in this life, the areas of trust that just when we struggle through it, Jesus, those are the things that you choose to use to show us that you are who you claim to be, that you'll take care of us and you'll take care of everyone around us. And so, Jesus, as we do that, would you help us to take our eyes off ourselves, to place them on you, and then through that to look around at the people around us that just need to experience your hope? And would you help us be formed into the community that become the kinds of people that give hope away to everyone? Jesus, we don't have to take like a huge leap today. All you're asking us to do is just take the next step. So would you help us to know what to do next, God? And would you give us the courage to walk out of here and go do it? We love you. It's in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.